Hello, friends, and welcome to the boot room. It's a Christmassy boot room, of course, because we're looking ahead to the Boxing Day game. Oxford United come to Portman Road after the big day itself, and it's going to be a huge day at Portman Road on Boxing Day. Stuart Watson here to break that down with me. And Stuart, we've got to start there, haven't we? Boxing Day football back at Portman Road, an absolutely massive crowd, the biggest home support of the season. What a day it's going to be.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Every chance this could be a record crowd for Boxing Day at Portman Road in the entire history of the football club. 27,500 plus sold at the beginning of last week. So it's getting towards a packed out Portman Road. And how good is it to have some festive football back? The last 2 years, we've been robbed of it because of COVID. You're going back to 2019 for the last time Ipswich played on Boxing Day. You're going all the way back to 2015 for the last time Ipswich won on Boxing Day when Luke Chambers got a last-minute winner against QPR. Year before that was the 4-2 win at Brentford that saw Ipswich go temporarily top of the table. So a similar type of narrative this time around would be very nice indeed.
It would indeed. Before we get on to the game itself and the various narratives around that, Stu, we have to kind of talk. We're only a few days away. Obviously, we're only a couple of days away from Christmas in this game, but we're also only a few days away from the January transfer window swinging open for the first time. And we've started to have bits of transfer news to kind of sink our teeth into. And key amongst that, yesterday, you got a chance to ask Kieran McKenna about the news that Massimo Luongo, former Town loanee, is actually training with the side at the moment. It may be a view to a potential move in January. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, he's confirmed the stories from various news outlets that Massimo Luongo has been training with Ipswich over the last few days. Didn't really want to say a whole lot more on it than that at the moment. Very respectful of the fact that he's still under contract at Middlesbrough, albeit for a few more days/weeks. I'm not sure exactly when that short-term contract at Middlesbrough expired, but he only signed for them for half a season back in the summer. He hasn't played for Middlesbrough at all. So the fact that he's been allowed to come and train at Ipswich would suggest that he is soon to become a free agent. Whether Ipswich decide to sign him or not remains to be seen, but he's someone that McKenna worked with during his time as a youth coach at Tottenham. McKenna is obviously good friends with Michael Carrick, who's the Middlesbrough manager, so there's quite a few dots being joined up there. Also, the fact that Ipswich are very short of central midfielders at the moment. We found out at yesterday's press conference that Panucci Kamara has undergone a third bout of groin surgery and is going to be out for several months. Lee Evans is obviously back and playing now, but even so, I think central midfield is clearly an area that McKenna is going to look to strengthen in January. Whether it's Luongo, who was very good for Sheffield Wednesday by all accounts in the second half of last season, remains to be seen. There is just that little injury question mark over him, and you think with the problems they've had with Kamara, there would be a slight fear that they might sign another lemon on the injury front there. And is that a risk they want to take going into the second half of the season? But if you could get a fully fit Luongo, I think he'd be a cracking signing.
Yeah, I was going to ask you actually your views on that. So if he is fit, you think he'd be a good bit of business?
Yeah, I think he came back around January time last season for Sheffield Wednesday and was a major part in their rapid rise up the table. I think Sheffield Wednesday fans were gutted when they offered him a new contract. He turned it down. He obviously felt he wanted to get back up to championship level. And it's, for whatever reason, I don't know why, not worked out for him at Middlesbrough. So, yeah, it's just that sort of slight question mark over fitness levels and things like that. But as a player, he's a real all-rounder. I think he's a playmaker. I've got vague memories of his time at Ipswich way back in 2012 under Paul Jewell. I think it was only nine games that he played on loan then. He's obviously gone and had a great deal more experience since then. But yeah, still only 30. Makes a lot of sense that signing, as long as he can prove his fitness, I guess.
Watch this space. We can't wait, can we, Stu, for the January transfer window to open? Great fun that is. Right then, you've already mentioned it. In terms of injuries being a narrative around town in recent days and weeks, it's been a big one, and we heard more news yesterday of another big injury, Panucci Kamara, who signed with by the sounds of it, a groin injury, which has proved to be much worse than anyone feared, and he's going to miss some months now, having undergone surgery again. And there's also updates on various defenders who've been out injured. Do you want to talk a little bit about injuries as we start to look towards Oxford?
Yeah, Kamara's obviously a blow. They signed him with that groin injury, which they hoped wasn't major, but it's just not got right. It's a complicated area. Anyone who's had groin problems knows that it's very difficult to get to the root cause of that, and that's been the case with Kamara. So he had one lot of surgery at Plymouth. He's had 2 more since he's come to Ipswich, and a case of months rather than weeks out, and it was kind of hopeful that he'll play again this season, but I don't think we're going to be seeing the best of Panucci Kamara this season. That's fair to say. So that's a blow, but there was some better news on some of those sort of more minor injuries, players that were kept out of last weekend's 1-0 defeat to Wickham, a lot of those in defence. Janoy Donasian, who came off with that ankle problem in the previous game. Luke Wolfenden, who missed out with a groin issue of his own. They're kind of 50-50s, I think, going into this Boxing Day game. They're going to have late fitness tests on those. If they don't make the Oxford game, every chance they'll be back for the trip to Portsmouth. Richard Keogh came off with a kick to the calf last weekend. Sounds like this game will come too close for him, but nothing too bad. And George Edmondson, who's been managing a bit of a knee issue. It sounds like he's he's had limited training in recent weeks. Sounds like he's had a good week of training under his belt this week, and no problems there with him. So aside from the Kamara problem, Ipswich are getting back towards a far better squad now. Lee Evans, of course, made his injury comeback last weekend. Marcus Harness is now very much in consideration for some game time over these next few games. So, Ipswich getting back to some better numbers now in terms of squad size.
Right, before I ask you to name your team, Stewie, I'm going to be mischievous and do a worst-case scenario for you. So we've talked there about the defenders, Janoy, Wolfie, Edmondson and Keogh, who we may or may not see on Boxing Day. If none of them can play on Boxing Day, very much a worst-case scenario. So that leaves you with KVY, Cameron Burgess and Leif Davis. What do you do at the back there?
Well, first of all, I think George Edmondson. It will be Edmondson who plays. Spoiler alert for the predicted team coming up. But for a bit of fun, it would be obviously KVY replaces Janoy at right back. Who's the other centre half? Ordinarily, I might say Lee Evans, but the fact that he's only just come back, I'm not sure I'd be pitching him straight in at centre half. Greg Lee is probably a possibility, but he has played a bit of centre half in his time. You'd have 2 left footers there in Burgess and Lee in a sort of a central defensive pair, if we're calling it a back 4. So that wouldn't be ideal. Lee's obviously not had loads of game time since his return from injury, but neither of those scenarios would be ideal, Mark. But hopefully Edmondson will be okay.
Yeah, that was very much a worst case scenario. I'll just stress that. Let's do the actual team then, Stu, so we can flash up our fancy graphic we've paid hundreds of pounds for. What do you reckon the team is going to be on Boxing Day? And are there other narratives around the team that you think are worth having a discussion?
I've got Walton in goal, Donasian, Edmondson, Burgess, Davis, Morsey, obviously. And then the first question mark is who pairs Morsey? Is Lee Evans ready to start? I think he will, because McKenna was asked yesterday, is he ready to start anytime soon? And it was a wry smile and soonish. I think I'm reading that as, we've got him penciled in to start, but we don't want to give too much away. He got a half-hour cameo at Wickham. Wasn't really sort of in the thick of the battle. Looked like someone that was just sort of easing his way back into it. He sat very deep on front of the toes of the centre halves. But as good as Cameron Humphreys has been, we've waxed lyrical about how mature his performances have been for a 19-year-old in the Ipswich Town midfield. He's rattled out a lot of games, and I just think it might be prudent for him to dip out at some stage. And that Lee Evans-Sam Morsey partnership was looking so good before Lee Evans got injured. And Lee Evans brings some different qualities, notably some physical qualities that maybe Cameron doesn't bring to the side. So I've got Lee Evans back into the midfield for Humphreys. And then there's always a rotation at the top end of the pitch under Kieran McKenna. I don't think we've ever seen the same front 3/4 start successive games for a long time under McKenna. I think Aluko will come back into this team, surprise starter. Then dips out against Wickham. I think he'll come back in for this one. Wonder if he'll go with him as the more of the central number 10. And he tried sort of Connor Chaplin playing more off the inside left. Talked about some better attacking angles or different attacking angles for Chaplin to work with. So I think we'll see a return to that. Probably Wes Burns still out on the right hand side, despite him being a little bit hot and cold this season. And then it's a case of which striker plays. Oxford are a more open attacking side, and we'll come on to their threats in a minute. I wonder if Caden Jackson's sort of pace off the shoulder to sort of counter their attacking play might be the option rather than Freddie Ladapo, who I don't think has ever done too much wrong when he comes into the team, but he's someone that wants to come deeper and nip play and link things up and play with his back to goal. And I just wonder if Jackson's qualities will be seen as better served for this game. But it's always a difficult one to predict with Kieran McKenna.
And we always have to talk about subs, haven't we? Because at the start of the season, we were talking about, wow, it's an embarrassment of riches. Town have got amazing options off the bench. And then it was for a while, they haven't really got any game changes. Now, do you feel like that we're back in a situation where they've got people they can bring on to change games? You've got likes of Carl Edwards, Gassan Ahadmi, potential come off the bench?
Yeah, I think Edwards has kind of slipped back into that impact sub role. There was a spell where we were talking about him having a real opportunity to finally go and grasp a starting spot, but I think that window of opportunity maybe is gone now with Aluko coming back and an option. So he needs to make sure he takes those chances, but he's definitely someone that's very useful to bring on against tiring defenders or when games start to open up. Or indeed, if teams start to sit deep, he's someone that can break the lines and go past someone. So he's very useful to have. Ahadmi, I think, is still getting up to speed a little bit in terms of fitness, but also sort of learning how a McKenna Ipswich Town side plays. I can't see a start. I mean, I didn't even mention him in the conversation for a start there. I think that's still far too early for him, but he might be a bit of a chaos option to bring off the bench at some point. So yeah, a few more options on the bench, and McKenna is keen to get back to having that real depth for the second half of the season. That was Ipswich's super strength during the opening few months. We were talking about not only the starting 11 being difficult to pick, but the 18-man match day squad. I think there's going to be several additions in January by the sound of things. We're not just talking about one player. I think we'll be talking more about 2 or 3 in January, and then really trying to tool up for the run-in.
Okay, that's a lot we've talked then about Ipswich Town as a team. What about the team that are going to be coming to Portman Road on Boxing Day? Oxford United, Stu. On paper, you look at them, a brief glance at the table, they're in 15th. So you think, but they've not actually lost in the league since October the 22nd when they were beaten 2-1 at home by Peterborough. And since then, they've had a run of draws. That's by far their most common result. But they've also done things like beat Bolton 3-1 away, which is a great result. So what are you expecting from Oxford?
Tough game. I think it's often said that the table doesn't lie come this stage of the season. This game will bring up the halfway mark. But I think in the case of Oxford, it does. This is a team that has always been in and around the top 6 over the previous 3 seasons. Carl Robinson is an experienced manager at this level. When you look through that team of theirs, by my count, there's 9 players with championship experience in that team, including the likes of Matty Taylor, who's a proven goal scorer. That doesn't even take into account people like Cameron Brannigan and Elliot Moore, who've been linked with big money moves higher up the chain. Their right back Anderson, they signed from Lazio in the summer. He's played in Serie A. So Kieran McKenna was very quick to say that 15th in the table does not tell the full story. It was Oxford. He's very big on statistics, and he says the underlying numbers behind them says that they are one of the better teams in this division, and he is preparing for Ipswich to face one of the better teams in this division on Monday. As you mentioned, their record, they're unbeaten in 10 across all competitions coming into this. A lot of draws in there, 6 draws. But away from home in particular, they've been very good. Their last away defeat in the league was at Plymouth. and you're going back, I think, to September to find that. Since then, they've got results on the road at Charlton, Exeter, Portsmouth, Bolton, Shrewsbury, Accrington, and last weekend at Sheffield Wednesday, which was a draw, but really should have been a win. They had lots of chances in that game, and they saw a late penalty saved in that as well. So to go to Sheffield Wednesday and almost win last weekend tells you everything about what a tough test this will be for Ipswich on Monday.
What kind of game are you expecting, Stu? Because we talked there, obviously Oxford have got a lot of good players. Brannigan's been absolutely on fire, hasn't he, in terms of one to watch this season. But often when Town and Oxford have played, they haven't made for the best spectacles. And we've seen a lot of times this season, teams come to Portman Road with not a lot of ambition. So how do you think Oxford would approach this game?
It's going to be interesting. You mentioned when Ipswich and Oxford have played, they've played each other 6 times since Ipswich have dropped into League One. I think we've had 5 draws, 4 of which have been 0-0, and 1 defeat. I think there's only been 3 goals across those 6 games. So there quite often has been a bit of a counteracting. Maybe when you get 2 similar sides, 2 similar styles, they kind of cancel each other out a little bit. Oxford, we've seen at Portman Road at times decide they were happy with the draw towards the end and have been sort of deploying some of those frustrating time-wasting tactics and things like that. But they've got some catching up to do in the table. Maybe on this occasion, they will decide that they need to start turning some draws into wins. McKenna thinks that they're going to come and play with a bit of ambition, and it's going to be an open game. He's very conscious that this is a big Boxing Day crowd, and he wants to put on an entertaining match for them. It's not often Ipswich adapt their style, the possession style of football, but I wonder if they'll look to sort of play a little bit more on the counter as a home team and let Oxford come onto them that little bit more, and then try and spring a trap on Oxford as the home side a bit. But it's going to be a fascinating clash of styles and hopefully an entertaining game for everyone that comes.
Hopefully indeed. Yeah, right then. So there's one more question to ask you, Stu. Before we get to the big question, the prediction, let's pause for some key stats. There we go then. That's all the key stats around the game. Hopefully you've got everything you need to know now around this game. The final thing you need to know is, of course, what Stuart Watson thinks is going to happen. Stu, you mentioned those often being a 0-0 scoreline between these two sides. Not a lot of goals. Is it going to be another 0-0 Boxing Day bore? Please tell me it's not.
Well, everything suggests draw, doesn't it? Because Oxford have had a load of draws recently. There's been a load of draws when these two sides have met in recent years. But I'm going with an Ipswich win because Ipswich have been really good at bouncing back from setbacks this season. If you think first league defeat at Plymouth, they followed that up with a big home win against Portsmouth in front of a bumper home crowd. Lost at home to Lincoln, followed that up with the win against Derby in front of a bumper Portman Road crowd. So let's hope the pattern continues, shall we? Lost at Wickham last weekend and then another massive home crowd to follow it up in the league. I just think the performance was really good at Wickham last weekend. Okay, they lost, bit of slack defending at one end, didn't take their chances at the other. It happens from time to time. You can't win them all, but I just think they've been so consistent with their performance levels this season that I'm going to back them to win. I think that sort of 12-man factor will get them over the line. And I want to see them get back to keeping a clean sheet. They haven't had one in the league since Exeter away. I've gone for a 1-0.
1-0, okay. I think when I did the December look ahead, I think I said 2-1 in this game. So I guess I've got to stick with that. So we're both going to say wins. Hopefully we're right. Friends, enjoy the game. Have a great Christmas, first of all, and then enjoy the game at Boxing Day if you're going. If you're not, follow it all with us. And we will see you on the very next Boot Room.